Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog. And Gog is the biblical name for Russia. And besides being known as Gog in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2, Russia is also known as the North Country in Jeremiah chapter 50, and the Medes in Isaiah chapter 13. The land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And that's talking about the Most High putting that old, confrontational Soviet Union spirit back on these Russian Edomites. And over these last years, you can definitely see that these Russians have been getting back into that old Soviet Union spirit. They helped Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian civil war, which allowed them to build back up their presence in that Middle Eastern region. They're building up their military assets in the Arctic Ocean region. They're doing geopolitical and military deals with nations like Sudan. They're backing Iran when her enemies come against her in some instances, and they're constantly making threats to the United States of America and the West as a whole for coming against them over their current military operation in Ukraine. There's even been talks of using nuclear-capable weapons against the U.S. and the West as a whole. And all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, and that's their military assets. Their tanks, fighter jets, helicopters, soldiers, the S-300, the S-400, mainly getting gathered down into that Middle Eastern region for the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon in Joel chapter 3. But the main point I want to hearken onto is where it says, And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. The Most High putting that old Soviet Union spirit back on these Russian Edomites. And I opened up the video with these verses to preface a clip from Wyon's YouTube channel titled Gravitas, Putin singles out U.S. as biggest threat to Russia, just to show that Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 4 is taking place right before our very eyes. And as the title said, Russia or Putin has singled out the U.S. as the biggest threat to Russia. And as we'll see in this clip, Russia is looking to re-expand its imperial assets globally. Putin in this clip even talks about Peter the Great and how he built up Russia's imperial navy, truly showing that the Most High is putting these Russian Edomites back into that old confrontational Soviet Union spirit. And what this is ultimately going to culminate into is Russia going against the United States of America during World War III and shooting her nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. And not just Russia and her allies like China, North Korea, and Iran, but also the allies of the United States of America, which are going to turn against her at some point during World War III and ally themselves with Russia to shoot those nuclear missiles onto the United States. 200 million of them at that. But I'm going to start this clip at the 1 minute mark. And also, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. This video is simply for educational purposes.
Мы открыто We have openly outlined the boundaries and zones of Russia's national interests, both economic and vital strategic. First of all, these are our Arctic waters, the waters of the Black, Okhotsk, and Bering Seas, as well as the Baltic and the Kuril Straits. We will ensure their protection firmly and by all means. The key here is the capabilities of the Navy. It's able to quickly respond to anyone who decides to encroach on our sovereignty and freedom.
How does Putin plan to do that? By upgrading the Navy. Once again, it is on point for the Russian president. He is an avid admirer of Peter the Great, the Russian monarch who founded Russia's Imperial Navy. On Sunday, Putin praised Peter the Great. At the same time, he announced some upgrades of his own. Hypersonic missiles.
And a lot of Russia's hypersonic weapons are nuclear capable. And besides planning to put the Zircon hypersonic weapon into use in the military, by the end of the year, Russia is also planning to put the Sarmat, or the Satan II nuclear missile, into military service.
It will suffice to mention the latest Zircon hypersonic missile systems that have no equal in the world, for which there are no barriers. Their delivery to the Russian armed forces will begin in the coming months. The frigate Admiral Gorshkov will be the first to take up combat duty with this formidable weapon on board.
Before inspecting his fleet, Putin signed a naval doctrine. 3 points stand out from this document. Number one, it singles out the United States as the biggest strategic threat to Russia. Number two, it identifies the Arctic as a new theater of focus. And
remember that part specifically. We'll get into that a little later.
Three, it aims to make Russia a global maritime power. And for that, the doctrine hints at securing more foreign bases. Now, this doctrine reveals Vladimir Putin's thinking. The West believes that he's stuck in Ukraine, but the Russian president is clearly thinking about the long term. His naval doctrine talks about the Arctic, about foreign bases, about containing US influence. Doesn't sound like a leader who's stuck. At the same time, there was no mention of Ukraine. Why is that?
And I will put hooks into thy jaws and turn thee back. The Most High putting these Russian Edomites back into that Soviet Union spirit, that imperialist spirit, wanting to spread their influence all across the planet. And what it's ultimately going to culminate into is Russia going against the US during World War III. That's it with this clip. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon. Speaking of the virgin daughter of Babylon, Mystery Babylon, Babylon the Great, the United States of America, an assembly of great nations from the North Country being Russia, because what's north of the United States of America, Canada, that Arctic Ocean region, and then Russia. And as we just heard in that clip, Russia is planning to expand further their military ambitions in that Arctic Ocean region. And it's also well known that Russia shooting its nuclear missiles across the Arctic Ocean region, as well as from its assets in the Arctic Ocean region, to reach its targets in the U.S. would be the shortest trajectory time for its missiles to reach the U.S. And that assembly of great nations are not just Russia's allies, like again, China, North Korea, and Iran, but also the allies of the United States of America, which at some point during World War III are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia. Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns being the EU or European Union, and the beast being NATO, these shall hate the whore, Babylon, the United States of America, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. And those arrows are symbolic for the nuclear missiles, because what you have to remember is that when the prophets saw these visions thousands of years ago, they weren't going to say a Zircon hypersonic missile, a S-500, a Sarmat or Satan II missile. They were going to describe it the best way they could with what they knew during their times, ancient weapons of war, like bows and arrows, spears, javelins, flying swords, etc., etc. And hey, Russia is definitely gearing up to go to war against the United States and use their military assets, their nuclear military assets. Now I'm going to play a little bit of this clip from the Canadian Preppers YouTube channel titled, "This Ain't Good, Some Unsettling News," to show that fact. And I'm going to start the video at the 16-minute and 21-second mark. And again, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this video, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
What you need to understand is that the United States and NATO are completely outgunned by the Soviets. I'm just going to call them the Soviets because we're probably going to get some country like that soon in the not so distant future here.
And the Most High put the spirit on the Canadian prepper to refer to the Russians as the Soviets. Again, I will put hooks into thy jaws and turn thee back.
The Soviets have mobile ICBM platforms so they can move them around. We don't have those. Okay, they have warheads, ICBMs that can carry 5 times the amount of ordnance. Okay, we don't have that. They have hypersonic missiles. They have better missile defense systems. They have submarines that can launch nukes from port. They just have a lot of advantages when it comes to a nuclear war. So all this talk about, nuclear war can't be won or nuclear winter. The scary thing is, guys, is that based on the research that I've been doing, that is not true. So just remember, if it's theoretical like that and everybody just presumes that's the way it is, yet it hasn't been tested, it's probably false. Okay, along those same lines, a new nuclear submarine, K-329 Belgorod, which is aptly termed because that's the border city in Russia that's constantly being shelled by the Ukrainians. The submarine K-329 Belgorod, which is a modified version of the class of submarines that NATO calls Oscar II, has officially joined the Russian fleet. Now, why is this important, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. What is important about the new submarine is that it will carry the new Poseidon weapon announced by Russian President Vladimir Putin on March 1st, 2018, along with 5 other new strategic strike weapons. The Poseidon is a torpedo submarine UAV with a nuclear or conventional warhead capable of developing the unreal speed of 185 knots on the seabed. It can dive to a depth of 1 kilometer with unlimited range and 100 megaton warhead. 100 megatons. The Tsar Bomba was 50 megatons. 100 megaton warhead would cause a tsunami that would probably travel across the Pacific Ocean. So, not looking good. Now, for those of you who are wondering, well, the United States has this massive military budget. How could they not have, better weapons than the Chinese and the Soviets? Well, the answer is simple. They have to service one of the largest, most spread out militaries in the world. They have to service all these aircraft carriers. That's where all the money goes. Very little, relatively, goes to R&D. And whereas, the Russians and the Chinese, they're not bogged down with all this expense and all these pensions that they have to pay for all these wars that have been waged all the years. So a lot of that money is, it's just inflated. It's not actually doing anything, especially not along the lines of nuclear conflict. And trust me, the more I research it, the more it appears that the Chinese and the Russians are preparing for a nuclear war, and they think they can win it. Latvia has...
Hey, and it's all through the will of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai that these Russian Edomites are in that spirit to advance their nuclear capable weapons, because they're going to use them against the United States of America and prevail against the United States of America. That's it with this clip. This is Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I. And behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. World War II, which is past, and World War III, which is quickly coming upon us. And it will go nuclear, and the 2 main combatants will be Babylon, the United States of America, and Gog, or the North Country, Russia. Back in Jeremiah chapter 50, I'm going to jump down to Verse 41, behold, a people shall come from the north country Russia, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth, from one end of the earth even unto the other, not only Russia's allies, but America's allies that are going to turn against her. They shall hold the bow and the lance, symbolic for those nuclear missiles. They are cruel and will not shew mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses. Everyone put in array like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon, that virgin daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, the United States of America. Like I said earlier, 200 million nuclear missiles are going to hit the United States of America, and they're going to turn it into the biblical lake of fire and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. Verse 40, as the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, and besides being known as Babylon the Great, the daughter of Babylon in the scriptures, the United States of America is also known as spiritual Sodom and Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8. And it's very easy to see why the United States of America is known as spiritual Sodom. Just look at what took place in the month of June. Saith Yahweh, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. After those nuclear missiles hit, it's going to be a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland, where after a time only desert creatures will dwell there. Verse 39, therefore the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Man, woman, or child will never set foot on the former United States of America ever again, and it's going to be an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like and what the punishment and judgment is for afflicting the apple of the Most High's eye, the true children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong, as we can clearly see we're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.